Good morning. I'm Bill McCarran. I'm the director of the Press Freedom Center at the National Press Club, and I want to welcome everyone who's here today. This is one of 8 programs we are doing over a series of 3 days to promote World Press Freedom Day and to bring important issues to light about journalism and about the threats to journalism. Very happy to have with us today Jason Rezaian and Alsu Kurmasheva. Both are journalists. Both are members of the National Press Club. Both are members of the board of the Press Freedom Center. Both were guests of countries for extended periods of time where the living conditions were very difficult. They were both in prison. And they're here today to talk about their experience. Alsu's going to share her experience. And part of recovery and part of being able to share these stories is practice in public and having someone interviewing who's got that kind of experience as Jason does. So we're grateful that they can be here. It's a period of time has passed. We think it's important to mark that and to have Alsu have a chance to reflect. I just want to say in both of these cases, although they're many years apart, the club and the new Press Freedom Center played a significant role in supporting the employers and the families of both of these folks in trying to marshal an effort to bring them out. And we're glad to have been part of successful outcomes in both of these cases. I would just say about each of these, if I had a wish for all of you, it was that you would get to know them as people. They're both wonderful folks. And, you know, after God made these two, he took the rest of the day off. So we'll let this happen, and we'll enjoy it, and we hope they enjoy it. And so please help me welcome Alsu Kurmasheva and Jason Rezaian to the National Press Club.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Bill. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here with Alsu. As Bill mentioned, we're both members of the club. We're also both ex-cons, and you know most clubs won't accept folks like us into their midst. And I think that should give you an indication of the kind of place the National Press Club is. I want to talk a lot about your experience, what it looked like from the inside. I think for people in the general public here in the United States who care about journalism, the idea that a journalist would be locked up behind bars on the other side of the world is a very foreign and hard to imagine reality, something that you and I share. Maybe content warning, Alsu and I have a good rapport, and we'll probably laugh a little bit about our experience, and we welcome you to do that as well. I think there's something farcical and so ridiculous about what we endured that the only appropriate way to approach it is with a bit of a sense of humor. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
Before we get into the conversation, we have a short animated video that we'd like to show. Do we have a screen with that ready to go? Let's watch that and then we'll talk.
Привет! Как вы? По местному каналу начался 3-й сезон моего любимого сериала. Классика жанра. К 3-му сезону невозможно оторваться. Поспать, перекусить и сходить в туалет успеваю только в перерывах на рекламу. После 3 ночей минимального сна главная героиня А выдержала 2 суда. Защитник Р блестяще выступил и задавал вопросы. Внятных ответов А и ее защитник так и не услышали. Зато на этом фоне ярко прозвучали выученные наизусть фразы обвинения и, собственно, решение суда. Конвоиры радовались, что их покажут по телевидению, и обещали изучить этот новый закон, о котором никто даже не слышал, но закрывают так жестко.
Эта серия была очень длинной. После суда А сидела в одной клетке, затем ее перевели в другую локацию. Она посидела и там. Благо ей было что читать, занимательную экспертизу по одной популярной книге и новый для нее роман. Было непонятно, куда ее везут, сколько время, когда она вернется в ту же камеру. На вопросы никто не отвечал. Была какая-то еда, которую А не ела, у нее были свои – орешки, апельсин и вода. После 7 вечера А возвращают в камеру.
А залезает на очень высокую постель, подтянувшись и высоко подняв ногу. Вот для чего она качала руки и ноги в предыдущих сезонах. И замирает в жуткой тишине. Только А уже не может сомкнуть глаз до утра. Эта часть тюрьмы, построенная 300 лет назад, выглядит так, как будто с тех пор не ремонтировалась. Высокие потолки, зарешоченные окна, одно над потолком. Зеленые стены, отваливающаяся штукатурка. После подъема старшая быстро объясняет А, чем жизнь здесь отличается от той, что была во 2 сезоне. Всем.
Прошло полдня. После обеда в камере должна быть тишина. А прилегла и уснула. Она не поверила своим ушам, когда к ней подошла старшая по камере и передала решение администрации перевести ее в другую камеру. Куда – неизвестно. Таких камер много, все они разные по составу и порядкам. За невыполнение этого распоряжения есть наказание, а об этом знает. Она долго не могла собраться ни с мыслями, ни с вещами. Она открыла свою синюю тетрадку, где были ее самые дорогие записи, и одно письмо, которое она знает уже почти наизусть.
Вечером она слышала, но не слушала, как обычно, много всего. А к такому уже привыкла. Во 2 сезоне таких эпизодов было много. Наконец, приносит снотворное для соседки, которая не спит по ночам, и А засыпает. И, о чудо, спит до самого утра. На следующий день новенькую уводят. У А в подсознании бегущей строкой появляется вопрос: а что это было? Но строка так быстро уходит, что сознание даже не успевает это зафиксировать. Вот краткое содержание 1 серии. Все детали не могу написать. Бланков не хватит. С нетерпением жду продолжения. Немного посмотрела анонс. Очень хочется знать, что смотрите и читаете вы. Пишите только если есть время и желание. Ваши письма, хоть 3 строчки, это мое все. Обнимаю. 3 декабря 2023 года, воскресенье вечером.
Thanks for experiencing that with us. You know, I know that when you're sitting behind bars, staying connected to the outside world, which is a virtual impossibility, is one of the most important goals. It drives you. It gives you hope. Talk about that in the context of what we just watched. We have to become imaginative and ingenious in how we do it.
I think after months of initial shock and me waiting every minute of that thick metal door would open and the chains will unchain and unlock us and somebody will appear saying, Alsu, this was a terrible mistake and we apologize, you are free to go. I still lived in that mode in my mind. After a month and a half, I realized that no, it's not happening. And I will spend some time here for a while and maybe a long time. And I had an urgent wish to tell as many stories as I can. I realized that there were certain rules I wasn't able to tell my friends what was going on in the cell, who I was talking to, not about interrogations or charges. Occasionally we had a TV in our cell and we were watching soap operas and those TV shows. And suddenly I realized that I can write a letter and many letters as if I watch a show. And this is how I started coding my letters. I was so curious if my friends and family would understand that. They did immediately from the first letter. And of course, I learned that only after I was released, when we could sit down and talk about it. Everybody was so happy. They knew what was happening to me. This was a very small example of the noise, prison noise. That noise will stay with me. It's still hard. Yesterday, by the way, was 9 months since I was released. It's still very hard for me to be, thank you, very hard for me to be in an environment with that background noise, especially with metal. I don't know, Jason, if you have that, it's very triggering. There are things I still can't tolerate, loud noise, shouts, swearing in any language, because it was surrounding me. But this gave me so much hope that I can tell, and I have a lot of other things to tell, those small prison stories that for people who want to hear. And thank you very much for being for this opportunity that I can take you with me, so you understand what I and Jason have been through. Jason was the first person I called. When I was able to talk to after I was released. Jason felt my pain because he shared my pain, because we were arrested in a country which we considered home, right? We were traveling home. I wasn't on my work trip. I was going there to take care of my mother. This is the basic, traditional, classic value. You care about your children, you care about your family, you care about your parents. And it was unimaginable that I would have been arrested on that kind of a trip. Traveling to Russia has always been risky for RFE journalists, because RFE works in the countries where there is no free press. Any kind of intimidation or harassment against journalists was possible, but arrest and detention and the treatment, like this bad treatment against me, was the first time.
I do want to say that the loud noises, especially in crowds, still set me off a little bit, as do the bright lights. I spent 24 hours a day with this kind of light on me. And all these years later, that sticks with me. What I can tell you is that little by little, the effect wears off, and it becomes a slight annoyance rather than something that'll ruin your day. Yeah. You talked about the importance of family and this sort of responsibility. For me, when I was taken, I'd been married for 15 months. I had a mother who hadn't been a widow for that long, and an older brother who tragically lost a child just a couple years before this happened. I felt a great sense of guilt, even though I had nothing to do with me, right? But also responsibility. And I can remember meeting Pavel and your daughters here in this building about 2 years ago. And that sort of sense of mission that I know that my brother had around getting me out, I could see that and feel that in a different kind of way than I ever had before. What were those feelings like of, Mama Bear?
Well, it's nothing more painful for a mother to be separated from her children, young children. I came back to a very different yet very resilient and strong family. I left my family, my two teenage and pre-teenage daughters, caring about music, fun, drama, TV shows, and I came back to a daughter who wants to be a lawyer and support journalists. I came back to a very resilient family. They were my champions. They championed the advocacy campaign, even with such a powerful state as the United States of America and the government. Family is the power who drives that power. So it's amazing. So I had an amazing team of RFE advocacy managers and people. We learned, as this never happened to us before, we all learned in action. And when I got back, I joined this team. We could have take some time off and just forget about it, right? I mean, some people do. And but it's not for us. As we see, there's so much to do as a journalist, as a press freedom advocate, as an advocate for imprisoned journalists. Since I got back, RFE has created a new position. I hope that position won't exist at some point. So I'm doing press freedom advocacy. I'm working on behalf of the families of and RFE to release our imprisoned journalists. We have 4 journalists in prison right now. I'm very worried about Nika Novak in Russia. She's in Siberia. Her crime was nothing else than reporting on culture from a Russian region of Siberia, working for RFE. And Farid Mirhalizadeh is in Baku in Azerbaijan. His crime is reporting on economics on behalf of RFE, working there. And there is Vlatia Sipenko in Crimea, Ihar Losik in Belarus. And all those people, they were working for the audiences in their countries, in their language, doing the most impactful journalism. That's why they have been imprisoned. And that's why we have to get them out, because I don't want to talk about the conditions. The conditions are horrific, but most importantly, they are deprived. The authorities do everything to deprive them of dignity. That's the most painful thing. I was kept in an isolated cell without hot water for 6 months. It was freezing temperatures outside. And just one example, you are too sick or too weak to warm up your water to brush your teeth in the morning, and it's cold, and this is one morning, night, the second morning, second night, and the third day you are not a human being anymore. And this is exactly what they want. This is exactly what they want, to make you confess to the crimes you haven't committed. And I'm very worried about the colleagues and other across the network who are being imprisoned, I'm sure we will, as a family and as a company, we will continue what we are doing to set them free, to release them.
I was very pleased to see that they created that position. Washington Post created a similar position, which I hold. I hope that all news organizations decide to take this on as a cause. One that affects every aspect of our work around the world, and not something that anybody in this business can hide from. I remember you and I, let's be very frank about this, we're, compared to your RFE, RL colleagues who are imprisoned right now, we had the benefit of great advocacy here in Washington, D.C., as U.S. citizens. I see in the room folks who are at the Wall Street Journal advocating for Evan. We did a lot of that here at the press club, and then all of a sudden your case happened. And I think that there was this great concern that that a deal might be consummated and that you might not be included in that, and that Vladimir Karamurza might not be included in it. What does it say about the Russian state that that it would take 3 journalists, very different types of journalists working for American media, and subject them to this kind of treatment?
Well, as you know, I wasn't designated as a wrongfully detained for a very long time. I got the designation by the US government only on the plane to the United States when I was released already. I'm very thankful for that, but the fact that I hadn't been designated immediately played a really big, had a big impact on me. Every time the captors would come to interrogate me, they would remind me that nobody in the United States wanted me back because they wouldn't designate me. And as I was isolated from all the information, I didn't know what about the advocacy campaign here and all the efforts you guys were doing here. Those feelings took over sometimes, and as I never thought that the exchange would happen so quickly, though every minute of 280 days were, every minute was painful, but I realized how lucky I was that it wasn't for years that I was there. And so the word exchange didn't come up for many, many months. And the captors were using the fact that I wasn't designated, that we can't speak about any exchange, nobody wants you there. And another thing, I knew that there was a journalist, Evan Gershkovich, who had been detained before me. There was Paul Whelan, like famous detainee in Russia. We knew about him, and most probably there were other Americans who were arrested. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know who, and still my thoughts and prayers are with all Americans who are in Russian custody right now. They all should be released and come home and reunite with their families. I didn't know how it would work. It's so hard to tell what's in their brains there. And only one thing I know, how to decode what they are saying, it's just the opposite. It's always the opposite. It's like when I'm talking to young journalists how to read or watch through Russian propaganda, I tell them just reverse it. Just like reverse it. Instead, actually, yesterday was a beautiful, great panel discussion with the colleagues from Barron's Observer. They also mentioned that if you are reading through Russian news and you see that there is a statement, like there was no nuclear disaster or something, just read through it. Like there was something.
Iranians are the same way. They say, we don't respond to pressure, which means pressure them more.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So, and back to that, just at some point they came to me saying, hey, all that advocacy doesn't help really. Yeah. Like you should stop it. And I said, oh, okay, now we know it, that it really helps. So, yeah, this is how I was, you guys kept me moving, kept me hopeful, because I knew that behind the hope there should be strategy. My only strategy was to survive and be back at some point, and you had a very powerful strategy here, and thanks to you, I'm here.
I want to talk about hope and actually not something that you and I have talked about much before, literature. Were you able to read much while you were detained? And how did that figure into to maintaining hope?
I didn't have access to the library for a couple of months, so I had to read whatever I got there in the cell. It was a lot of literature on Christianity and prayers, and some really good books on memoirs of former prisoners during Gulag times. It was like interesting to reread them. But when there was nothing to read, I was reading ingredients on food packages. And it's a very interesting experience just to occupy my mind with something. Yep. I needed to just stick to something. And they were, as you know, there are with imported food, there are ingredients in many languages, and I would find the languages, say like Armenian, where the alphabet is like very, very different from anything I speak. And I would copy, like write when I had a pen and pencil and a paper. I would write the letters and the words and figure out like what it means, sugar or something. And you imagine my happiness when an Armenian lady just appeared in the cell. I was so happy to see her, and nobody would understand why. I said, "Oh, I need you," and please. And it was a funny moment. So I wrote down a couple of Armenian words in my diary, and it's nice. She was. This is how I learned a couple of. As you know, Russia is very multi-ethnic, cultural. There are many languages, and. They were women from different Russian regions in the cell coming and going. So every time I met someone new, I would like grab her and say, "Hey, sit down, write down how you say thank you, hello in your language." And this is, I memorized. So when I didn't have books to read, this is what I occupied myself with.
I hope the two of you get a chance to bake together at some point.
I hope so. I hope she's still unfortunately serving her sentence, but she will be out one day. Everybody will be.
The flip side of how Russia treats journalists, the fact that the U.S. government and it requires a lot of public advocacy, private advocacy, pressure, but that it will go to such lengths to bring Americans home has not been the reality always. Did you have any sort of faith and hope that the U.S. government would intervene in the ways that it did?
Look, again, I didn't think that far. My hope was my family. Literally, my husband, who sits here in this room, Pavel Butorin. I'm here thanks to him. I mean, thank you. But this is true. I mean, the U.S. government is we know, powerful, somewhere there, far away, and you are in prison, right? You are in prison, disconnected from everything. And I knew from my lawyers that the U.S. Embassy was trying to contact me, and they were denied. They were trying to send me medication, and they were denied. And so what I had no idea how it would work. And then I was getting those short notes from my husband saying, again, coded, I had a meeting and I think something might come up. And I had no idea where that meeting was, which country, with whom. And I believed him. Him. And of course, I was getting sometimes notes that this is not going anywhere, but hold on, please. Again, okay, what might that mean? So I had so much time to think about it, and it was working against me, of course, like ruining my mind. So I had to go back to my routine, like a bit exercising, taking care of myself, writing or reading or holding all those conversations in the cell. But those kind of short messages of communication were the bridge for me between the American government and myself, where I wasn't sure when I will come home, how I will come home. But of course, I believe that I would be free one day. I will go home.
I think to survive, you have to maintain that belief. For me, for many months, my captors were threatening to execute me. You stop believing those threats after a while. But then the fear becomes growing old in this place. I don't want to ask you about darkest moments, but if you can talk about the fears of not coming home.
As with you, as you said, about executing. with me, they would say that my sentence would be 10 years. And then they would say the way that, so they knew how old my daughters were, right? They would say, well, your daughter will be 25 when you come back, if you survive, because it's very hard to survive in a labor camp. 25, so imagine. And they would, like, conduct all those conversations, like, in a beautiful manner of storytelling, and 25, and she's 15 now. So, and building up that tension. Of course, there was fear. But then you just, you don't accept it. Acceptance is not the word in prison. It's not acceptance. Is it resilience? No, it's not resilience. You are not resilient in prison. You just do the next thing you have to do. I mean, you are taken for that mandatory walk in the court, right? I mean, this is in the courtyard. Yeah. So you have to go. You go. And then you make, actually, when the courtyards were a bit bigger, I would run my 40 laps there. I couldn't run more than 40 because I got dizzy. So I would run my 40 laps, and it helped. And then once I was doing yoga outside in that courtyard, and it took me months before I could look up in the sun because there were so many layers of barbed wire there. And I was doing yoga in my sun salutation position, and one of the cellmates say, "Oh my gosh, Alsu, your face expression is like you are doing yoga in Central Park in New York." And she has never been to Central Park, and she didn't know that I have been there. Yeah. She didn't know that. And I said, like, "Why did you mention Central Park, New York?" She said, "I don't know. I just saw that in the movies that people do yoga in Central Park." And I looked at her and said, "Thank you. Thank you for your words." And when I got back, I went to Central Park, and I did it. So, just those things keep you going. When 100%. Like the most fearful moment comes, always the other part of this world, the energy, you call it, like whatever you believe in, God, they give something else instead. This is how I live now. This is how I survived in prison. It's the basic, it's universal, it's in every religion, it's every belief, that you get as much as you can handle. Yeah. This is how my grandmother taught me.
I think that this is very important. I appreciate you saying that when you're in prison, you're not really resilient. That's true. You're in a very kind of distinct survival mode. And these moments, a phrase from somebody is like oxygen if you're drowning, right? Just a little shot to keep you going for another hour or two.
The brain works differently. Actually, one very brief moment, if I may. I recalled it later. I never paid so much attention to it. When I was arrested, I was in my mom's home. I was making lunch. I was making something very traditional with rice and meat, pilaf with apricots, raisins, something that you can't rush through. You need some time to it. So I was in the middle of it, and the people in black masks stormed my mom's door, so I had to talk to my mom, prepare, call the lawyer, let my husband, that like kind of thing. And I was still looking at that, like what was happening there, so I don't burn it. I remember that. And then the moment when I was taken handcuffed from home, the last thing I said, there were neighbors and like shocked to my mom, and please turn off the stove, don't forget it. Like this is how brain works. Yeah. Like in the moment of fear and like the biggest disaster, I think the brain just focuses on something that is very dear and close to you, which is like food here. And it survives. I mean, it helps. It helped me to survive.
Yeah, I mean, 24 hours in a day in prison is very long. Yeah. And you have to learn how to fill that time, fill those thoughts. I want to open it up to questions. We have a nice group of folks here, and I'm sure people would like to.
I just want to say what we are seeing here. When I was in prison, there had been made a lot of art. I didn't even know that. I realized that when I got back. So a group of graphic designers around the globe got together, and they were united by my very dear friend in Prague. She's Iranian-French curator Yasmin Golshani. She collected all that art for us just to see how they were planning to organize an exhibition while I was in jail. Luckily, I was released. And this is my portrait made by Pavel when I was in jail. So, and so many letters. She wrote 288 letters to me, and she never sent them because they wouldn't go through the censorship. But she kept them, and I read them when I came back.
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, questions?
While we're forming here.
A simple question about interrogation. When you were interrogated, what were the kinds of questions, or what direction might they have been pushing you?
They were not pushing me to any direction. They were asking about my journalism, which all the whole information about me is public, and there was nothing new I could tell them, and about RFERL work, how it works. Everything was public. Nothing that I'm not holding any secret information they wanted from me.
They ask the same questions over and over?
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to say that one of the things I've learned as a way to appreciate Alsu is if you listen to her with your eyes closed sometimes, her voice is her instrument, and it really stood out for me today when we were hearing the Russian. I'd love to know Tartar, the other languages that you know, but really it's a great voice, and I just wanted to recognize that. Can you share something happens for you on the tarmac when the exchange is about to take place? Can you share something about that today?
In Ankara, I mean.
Yes. About
Yeah.
your as you're preparing to descend.
Yes. So when the Russian plane landed in Ankara, Paul Whelan was the first to on board to go down, and Evan was the second. I was supposed to be the third, and each of us were accompanied by somebody from FSB, I guess, and to be given to the other side. And suddenly, my companion stopped me like that, saying, "Kurmasheva, stop." I think it was a couple of seconds. It wasn't long, but it felt so long. I remember Evan looking at me from the bottom saying, like, "No way." I said, "No." And then I thought that I would jump. It was like very high. That I would jump. Absolutely. I would jump to set my feet on the Turkish crowd. And this is what went through my mind. Just to show how fragile everything was, even when we were on the plane from Ankara to the United States. We felt safe, but still, everything was so fragile. Until the last moment, my name wasn't on the lists, and until the last moment, nobody knew if I was going to be released. I don't know. Those things are beyond my understanding, and I don't even want to think about it. But I'm so grateful it happened. I'm so grateful the deal was as it was planned. There are so many more people there who just deserve to be back with their families, and I hope we can continue working on that.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thanks, Jason. Thank you also. It's fantastic to hear from both of you on your experiences. I really appreciate you kind of going into a little bit of how, one thing at the press club that we talked a lot about was, of course, your freedom, but also the fact that you were not given the wrongfully detained designation. And I appreciate you talking a little bit about what that meant to you at the time. I'm wondering, since have you had the chance to talk with some folks, within the U.S. government who were responsible for that, about why that designation didn't happen until so late in the game?
I asked that question and I didn't get a response. I still don't know who exactly is in charge of that, who had to do that, but I just stopped on the moment that I got it, which gave me an opportunity for medical treatment at San Antonio and being part of that hostage community and former hostages community. We're a great community who support each other, and that's it. I decided to stop on something. You know, when I can't change or control something, I just take a break. I don't know.
Thank you.
Here, Bill.
Thank you for this extraordinary interchange. I think it's really unique. Listening to it, I wonder what you would like to see the audience, both here and hopefully in other places, do. And just to focus that a little bit more, I think a lot of people would be inclined to, let's say, use social media or take other steps, but that's almost routine. Is there another level of confrontation that you might like to see people take within their appropriate professional capacities to really advance understanding of what you've gone through, what other people are going through?
You want to say me?
You go first,
Yeah.
and I'll say something.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. The question in itself already is a good help. I don't know if you had a chance to open RSF's Press Freedom Index this morning. It says that the biggest hardship, the biggest threat to press freedom is economic situation. And I can't talk much about that because, I mean, nobody has so money or something here, but it's very important. That's one thing, very important. Public interest media should be supported. The second thing, these most urgent press freedom lists are coming these days, and we see the names. Just take time to open those names and read about them and share and talk about them with your children, students, young journalists, anyone, because all those people are people like me, people like Jason, with fears, with uncertainty, with future, with fathers, mothers, and sisters and wives to someone, like real people. And then when we say that, yeah, there are many journalists behind bars these days, it's still not that huge amount that we can forget, because if the amount is big and millions of people, the names can get lost. Here it's hundreds, right? And we are capable of keeping their stories in spotlights, in any media we work, and just keep telling people about them. And support the organizations they work for. This is so important. You all know about the tragic death of the Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina in Russian custody. It's a horrible, horrible loss for all of us. I met her colleagues at the Perugia Journalism Festival. We had a very good talk. We cried, we were emotional, we shared our pain. At the same time, we talked how they will continue what she was doing. And they need support. By supporting them, we support press freedom. So behind press freedom, there is an individual, there is a real person, a real human being. Think about some joint projects together, and This is how I see it.
To piggyback off of that, I've been covering these kinds of cases since I returned to journalism after my release in 2016. One of my biggest points of contention with the news media was how we presented what I call, and what I think almost everybody here now calls, hostage cases. Jason Rezaian, Washington Post, Tehran correspondent, arrested and charged with espionage. I think that's probably a headline that was in my own newspaper at the time of my arrest. That kind of headline does me no favors, right? So for the past 9 years since my release, I have been kind of pounding on this issue. Don't do the heavy lifting of the hostage taker for them, right? And I think we saw a lot of shifts in that, fortunately, and we still have a long way to go. To Alsu's point, I mean, these are human beings behind these stories, and the RSF Press Freedom Index and other documentation about the rising tide of arrests of journalists around the world, that's very, very essential work. But I want to caution everybody not to turn these just into statistics. These are real stories of real people. I'm looking around the room, I see several of them right now. 2 of them right here. And I think amplifying the human element of these stories is incredibly important. There's a public component of this work, and then there is the behind the scenes in the halls of power aspect of it, which I think many in the news industry shied away from for a long time. And thankfully, I think there is an understanding now that the arrest of journalists around the world is an existential threat to what we do, and we have to treat it as such collectively.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Gedman. Alsu and Jason, thank you. Can I follow on with something you alluded to earlier, and that is the United States right now? So charitably put, we now have less interest in media freedom and the fate of human rights and rule of law abroad. More sharply put, we sympathize with authoritarian rule. What does that mean for this discussion? How do you think about that? What do you recommend we start tackling in that context?
You go first.
I'll start. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. I mean, I think I would reposit it and say they think of authoritarian rule as something to covet. I don't think we do, and I don't think that that's a value that's shared widely across this country. And I think that as we've seen with this administration so far, and in the previous iteration of it, they did continue to bring people home, right? Because it's politically valuable, right, to bring Americans home. These human rights, when it relates to U.S. citizens, and maybe less so today than before, but still matter. And I think we have to really push on that lever. That citizenship to this country comes with certain rights and a responsibility by the U.S. government to take care of us, especially when we're in trouble. And I don't need to tell people in this room that it doesn't always work out that way, but we have to force them to make it work. And you know, I am horrified by some of the things that have already happened in these last 100 or so days, but it doesn't lessen my desire to keep pushing these issues forward.
Very well said about the hostage. I will just add from the RFERL point of view, if RFERL stops to be funded by the U.S. Congress, it will happen that an organization with a 75-year-old experience. So many bridges built to connect America and the audiences there, those countries. We speak their languages. We know how to reach them. We understand what they think about. We can predict what's going on. And that if those bridges with over 20 countries are shut down or closed, broke at once, it will be very hard to rebuild it. That urgency to rebuild will be there very soon, because in a global world with everything connected, nobody can isolate themselves. We have to work together, like on one level or another. It's just there are things that we can do really well for the safety of Americans overseas and abroad, and I hope we will continue doing that.
Good morning. Do I have to press a button? Okay. Good morning, Alsu. Good morning, Jason. My name is Netta Shargi. I'm the sister of a former hostage in Iran, former chair of the Bring Our Families Home campaign, which was a group of families coming together to advocate on their behalf, and I'm currently a board member at the Foley Foundation. One of the, you've alluded to this in your comments, but I wanted to ask about something, and that is the compartmentalization and also the hierarchy of hostages. So a hostage or a wrongful detainee who is a journalist is prioritized even in the media and among the American public in one way, as compared to someone who wasn't a journalist, who was just an ordinary American who was taken. And I've noticed this affects advocacy. So for example, when Evan was taken, he didn't choose to join the campaign because I think the perception is that journalists will get special attention that ordinary Americans may not in the media. And I think this plays into the hands of the captors by us prioritizing who is more important than others in terms of who has been taken hostage. And I remember when the Americans came home from Iran, the Washington Post actually put out a piece saying there should not have been a deal to bring the Americans home from Iran. And when Evan came home, and you came home, the narrative was very different, that it was correct that we did what we needed to do to bring our Americans home. My question is this: we agree that it's always the right thing to do to bring American hostages and wrongful detainees home. But how can we bridge this gap so that the media treats us all equally and doesn't say that a journalist's life is more valuable than an ordinary American who was wrongfully detained and held hostage?
I'll say briefly, as I'm very new in advocacy industry and I'm still learning, there was criticism. There was criticism because when Evan and I and Paul were exchanged to real criminals, and we're just journalists, right? Like exactly like that. The quote, just journalists exchanged to real criminals. There was criticism, and I have no words to say. This was a very difficult decision made by the Western governments and the United States to do so. What we can do to see a human being as a hostage. Yes, journalists, but journalists can also raise awareness about other hostages too. This is like, we should just work together. And Jason, you know more about this.
I think, my feeling about this is obviously colored by my own experience and the tremendous advocacy that was done on my behalf. And then to see that kind of advocacy sort of, I would say, lapped almost by the Wall Street Journal's advocacy for Evan. You and I have talked about this, going back years. My position has always been, I understand that in the eyes of the U.S. government, there's going to be a hierarchy. It would be a lie to say that's not true. So figure out what the resources you have available to you as a family. And I've been in situations where I've met people who live far from the U.S. Capitol, who don't have the means to come here. And I thought to myself, I don't know how we're going to lift this person's story. I don't run a news organization, I don't run the media, but I work in one, and I understand the inherent challenges of working in a big structure like that. And what I've tried to do is take those resources and apply them to every single case that I can. And sometimes somebody comes to me and I've written about, their loved one's story. I got to a point a couple of years ago, and things have changed in our industry. We put out less content than we did before. There's so many variables at play that I came to this realization. I'm going to have, on most of these cases, 2 shots. The story of this person being detained and the story of them coming home. If I get 3 or 4 or 5 shots on a case, somebody else is doing incredible work out there in the world, and that incredible work might be the bad guys abusing these people in very specific ways. But otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get it into print. And that's not the Washington Post's fault. That's not the New York Times' fault, the Wall Street Journal's fault. It's just the reality of a situation or industry that has much bigger concerns. So again, I mean, my push always on day one is, hey, I know that this is scary for you. Your loved one is being held in a place where we don't control what those people do or what that person's fate is. Do whatever you can to get this up to the President of the United States, desk, because that's the person that's going to bring your loved one home. Again, it's not perfect, but this is, my read of the situation after looking at dozens of these cases.
This is the National Press Club, and this is World Press Freedom Day. So I'm going to take a contrary view to this, because I think in every truth, like the truth that we just shared here, there's a flip side. Jason, were you taken because you're a journalist?
I was taken.
Short answer, please. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, were you taken because you were a journalist?
Yes.
So your job caused you, in part, to be in prison.
Yeah.
Is it a truth that part of the reason that you were taken was that because of your job, there would be increased attention to your detention? And that was a value that the captor was trying to get, right? So what we want is a change in the wrongful detention policy so that when a journalist is taken, that there is a presumption that they are wrongfully detained. There is not one case where a journalist has been taken hostage where it wasn't wrongful detention. There are cases, many of them, where someone is taken where there is a criminal act, a United States citizen, or criminal act, right? And so this is a very different situation. And I'm not saying all are, that if you're not a journalist, that's means you did something wrong. There's many wrongful detentions. On a practical matter, Emily's question about this earlier about wrongful detention. Alsu's answer about how she was not allowed to be visited by people from the embassy. Mm-hmm. If she's wrongfully detained, she gets those visits, right? That's just a practical matter. Last thing, timing. The world's record for setting, wrongful detention case was Evan Gershkovich, 13 days. Amazing work by the Wall Street Journal team and others to push that. 13 days is a lifetime in a news cycle. That's 2 weeks of Russian propaganda unopposed by the United States, where the United States is not saying to reporters, this is, can I say bullshit on C-SPAN? This is bullshit. He is not a criminal. And the Russians are saying he is a criminal. And it's 2 weeks we're sitting on our hands. And that is not acceptable. So we must change so that when a journalist is taken hostage, that we immediately say this is a wrongful detention, so we don't lose the 2 weeks, which is the only time, as Jason says, if I get 2 shots, it's when he's taken and when they come home. I don't care about when they come home, right? I do want them to come home, but I don't care about that news story. We're losing 2 weeks on the most important dates, right? When that person is taken. It cannot go on. It cannot go on. And this is not to say, oh, the journalist's life is more important than another life. This is to recognize this is intentional. This is being done on purpose by these governments. They are targeted because they're journalists. And we are putting our heads in the sand if we are not understanding that. So today is World Press Freedom Day. Stand up for this. Andrew asked, what can you do? You can call your congressman. You can say that the current situation is intolerable, needs to be changed for journalists. We cannot allow this to go on. Sorry about the passion. Thank you, guys.
I don't know how much time we have on the clock. We're done.
There was a wrap up. Nice.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, and welcome to the Press Club. I'm Bill McCarran. This is one of 8 events that we are holding over the next several days about World Press Freedom Day. The United States is a democracy. That democracy thrives on the idea that our members need to be fully informed in order to participate. When journalism is stopped, the system of government that we have is in peril. When journalists are driven out of Russia, our ability to understand Russia is diminished considerably. We are interested in how innovative and dedicated journalists are finding ways to continue to bring their skills and understanding about what's happening in Russia to the world and to United States citizens so they can understand this important bilateral, relationship and understand what's going on in Russia. This is enormously valuable to us as consumers of journalism, but more importantly to us as citizens in a democracy. So we're very grateful to have this panel today. I wanted to thank our sponsors, the Washington Post, the Foley Foundation, the National Press Club, and the National Press Club Journalism Institute. And I'm going to introduce you to Alsu Kurmasheva. She's a journalist for Radio Free Europe. She's a member of the board of the Press Freedom Center at the National Press Club, and she's a member of the club and a friend. So it's great to see you, Alsu.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you, Bill, very much. This World Press Freedom Day marks the 3rd year Russian journalists have operated in exile since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And hundreds of journalists and media outlets have relocated to cities like Riga, Berlin, Tbilisi, and Prague. And from abroad, they face censorship, repression, and logistical challenges, financial challenges, yet continuing reporting. I've worked with RFERL for more than 20 years. I've done regional reporting in Russia, covering ethnic minority Tatars and Bashkirs, so I know a lot about the connection to the Russian audience. And the regional reporting has been the most impactful journalism that we've been doing because that connection was very, very tight. Since RFE was designated undesirable organizations, we don't have anybody reporting from Russia, and it's becoming extremely, extremely difficult to report from Russia. Here, I'm so proud to share the stage with prominent journalists and prominent criminals. I had breakfast with one criminal, Jason Rezaian. I'm having this panel with 2 other criminals. They will talk about the, so to say, crimes themselves. They're doing an incredible job covering Russia, and here they are to answer some of our questions, what we need to know and why we need to cover Russia. I'll start with Mikhail Zygar. He's a Russian journalist, historian, and best-selling author, known for his work on Russian politics propaganda. He was the founding editor-in-chief of TV Rain, Russia's only independent news channel, before being forced into exile. You can find his books online. He is very famous, and he is based in the United States. He contributes to major news outlets here in the United States. Masha Borzunova is a Russian journalist based in Berlin. And before Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine, Masha lived in Moscow, where she worked for the independent TV channel Rain. And since 2019, Masha has hosted the show Fake News, first for TV Rain, and now she's running her project, independent project herself. And she, both of them are holding multiple press freedom awards, journalism awards in different countries.
And some awards from Russian government.
And from Russian government.
Like we are foreign agents, for example.
We all have like 8, in my case it was 6.5 years of sentence. It's an award.
8.5.
8.5 on the same charges of spreading
fake news about Russian army.
Let me start, because they have incredible things, much more interesting things to tell than me. Share a bit of personal experience. What has been happening with you in these 3 years? You left Russia with one small suitcase. Did you think it will be a year, a couple of months, a year, 2, 3? How do you feel? Masha, can I start with you? Very briefly.
Yeah, I had to leave Russia in a week after the invasion because TV Rain was blocked, and we received a couple messages from our sources that maybe it's going to be even worse. Maybe they will come with searches in our office. Maybe they would arrest some of the journalists from
They
our
did
channel.
come, right?
And we fled the country.
Yeah.
We had to leave, and we had to stop the air of our programs, of course. And I remember this night when I packed my stuff, and it was the beginning of the spring, and I was thinking, should I pack my summer clothes? And I answered to myself that, why? I can always come back and pack them if I need to. And I realized that I was stupid at this moment when I woke up in Istanbul. I was like, no, it will not last for a month or maybe 2. Maybe it will last years, and it is.
Yes, this was something very personal. Of course, professionally, TV Rain restarted their operations
firstly, in a month after I had to leave the country, I was declared as a foreign agent, and it was like saying hi and not hi, goodbye from my country, that no, you cannot come back. You left the country, so no, don't come back. And I was like, okay. And after that, I received an official document from Ministry of Justice why I was declared as a foreign agent. So at that moment, they had to find foreign financing, foreign fundings on your bank accounts, and they did find them. I was declared as a foreign agent for approximately $100. That was money that was sent from my friends to my bank accounts, from my friends who are holding foreign passports.
Yeah, one of them is very famous.
One of them is Evan Gershkovich. Yeah, and he sent me approximately $10. And second, $90 was from my colleague from Belarus. And I was like, it's strange because I thought that Belarus is our allies. So, but this is how they explained me why I was declared as a foreign agent. And we started, with my colleagues, to rebuild TV Rain. Firstly, from Georgia, we started separate YouTube channels and we started to stream our news programs. I started to do fake news from Exile right now.
The project called Fake News.
The project,
Not
yes.
exactly fake news.
Project called Fake News, yeah. It's a program about, how Alsu said, it's a program where I'm exposing Russian propaganda. I do it for 6 years already. And I'm the person who every day watch Russian state TV channels. Like, I wake up and watch Margarita Simonyan, Vladimir Solovyov, and other persons that you may know, and try to expose Russian Kremlin narratives. And after that, we started our channel from Latvia, and continue our work from Exile. Yeah.
Mikhail, what your first months after leaving?
I'll start with the first morning, because I was not this. I didn't have any illusions on the very first morning of February 24th. I remember waking up and waking up my daughter, telling her that you need to go to school quickly because we have very bad news. The war has started, and we switched on TV Rain and started watching it live. And the same morning, I wrote just 2 paragraphs in open petition, and I called to a few of my friends. The most I managed to collect 13 most prominent Russian writers, artists, journalists, and we published this open petition the same day, February 24th, on the Meduza website, on another very important Russian independent media. And actually it was the first open protest of Russian intellectuals against the war, denouncing this war, and immediately it was reposted by thousands, then tens of thousands of different Russian people on their social media. And basically afterwards it was clear that I received my first badge of honor for an agent for authoring this open petition. But actually, almost immediately, almost the first day, it was clear for me that I had to leave, and it was not only the question of safety. It was clear for me that we were not able to stay there, because if your country becomes fascist, you have to do something about it. And you have really to fight against it, and it was impossible to continue that fight from within Russia. So I left on the third day. I remember trying to cheat my partner. I was telling him that, we are going to leave. Probably you're going to be able to come back to take our stuff, but there is an option that that we're living forever. So. But I had no illusions from the first moment that I'm leaving. I mean, I think that we all will have the opportunity to go back one day and to continue our work in Russia. But on the first day, you have to think about living forever, because there is no other way for you to continue your work outside of the country if you are sitting on your suitcases waiting for the moment to go back. And I remember you asked about different expectations. I remember we had the conversation in Berlin. I moved to Berlin, and we had probably in April 2022 some kind of immigrant party with Natasha Sindeyeva, owner of TV Rain, and some former colleagues. And we started making bets. Who thinks when we're going to go back? One of the forecasts was this July, meaning July 2022. Another one was in a year, next summer. Then 3 years. My forecast was 7 years, and the most pessimistic one was my partner. He said 15 years. And now I think that he was closer probably to the reality, much more sober than most of us.
You are talking prison terms here for all the charges that journalists get in Russia. And there are more than 20 journalists in Russia right now in prisons, and one of them is RFERL, and many of your colleagues. But we will talk about like going back, because this is what journalists do. They report from the country. They have to do that. This is not the right thing. This is not the natural thing that has to be done, to be reporting from exile. Still, you guys are doing a great job. Before asking about what you are doing, there is no need to say that our audiences, your audiences, are big. People know how to find you. People know how to turn to your videos, texts and articles and lectures and seminars you give. What is the average consumer of your product in Russia? Just give us a profile, the age, education.
We know all the statistics, and we know that more or less 10 to 15% of Russian population is watching and reading the news from the independent media on a daily basis, almost. So it's not crazy amount of people, but like 15% in the country that officially ignores the war and pretends that nothing is happening. That's a great amount of people. Up to 20 million people consuming it, and like it's clearly psychologically very hard, because majority of Russians are trying to pretend that nothing is happening, but there are people there who live in the country and they know that they somehow risk consuming all those materials, watching all those videos, and they are literally doing something masochistic. They are torturing themselves. They're exposing themselves to daily depression, but they want to know, because like it's harder, but they still choose that opportunity. But at the same time, I think it's very important that our potential audience is not just like those 15%, because there was very interesting moment when we had the opportunity to see that our potential audience is much bigger. That was the moment, I think it was last year, it was late 2023, when a terrorist attack happened in Moscow, in the concert hall Crocus. And that was, as always happens in Russia, because the only law, the only real unwritten law in Russia is like no one wants to take responsibility before the boss authorizes anything. So Russian state-owned media could not report live about that terror attack. So it was happening in Moscow. The concert hall was burning. People were dying, and no Russian media were reporting about it live. And we saw that Muscovites turned on TV Rain that was broadcasting from Amsterdam. So the only possibility for people in Moscow to get real-time news about what was happening in Moscow was to watch independent TV channel from Amsterdam, and we saw all those statistics, and we saw that the proof that people know, actually they know where the truth is, and if they really need the real truthful information, if it's a matter of life and death, they know where to go. They don't trust state-owned television. They don't trust any Russian-based news media. They go to TV Rain, Medusa, or other independent media in exile.
Yeah, I know, Masha, your project sparks conversations between generations and the family. Can you tell us more?
Firstly, I want to say that, of course, like Kremlin did everything to polarize Russian society, and it did it well. Unfortunately, it works. And of course, it's really difficult to reach audience like that don't want to hear about war, for example, like Mikhail said, because they just don't know what to do with it. They cannot protest against the war. They cannot go to the elections, for example, and vote against Vladimir Putin and his politics. And many people, they decide to close their eyes, or, for example, to reach pro-war audience, people who support this war. But I know examples when my viewers, for example, they text me that, we show your video to our mother, father, or someone who believes in what they were saying from TV, from state TV channels, and they were like, something's going on here, maybe they are lying to me. Or, for example, okay, they understand that they cannot show my programs to their relatives because I have a big sign before every video that I'm a foreign agent. I should do it like according to Russian law. And they cannot do it because, of course, people who believe in Russian propaganda, they will see this sign and they will like, she's an enemy. I will not watch it. But they watch my programs and they can find some arguments to use them in conversations with their relatives. And it's pretty useful too. But another moment that I want to talk about that, for example, even pro-war activists, or for example, Russian soldiers, when they have problems with their commanders or when they have problems with government, they text me or my colleagues from exiled media. For example, when they don't want to fight anymore and they refuse to fight, to continue fight on battlefield in Ukraine, but their commanders force them to do this, they will text me, not Russian state TV channel, because they know that Russian state TV channel or Russian pro-Kremlin media, they will not publish it. Only exiled media can share their story. And this is another interesting moment that we have contact with this audience sometimes.
Well, our FRL projects that are covering, regional projects that are covering Russia, get lots of feedback like that from the families of soldiers who are missing in Ukraine, and they learn about them from the investigative projects that RFE is doing. So this resonates with me very, very well. I have a question to you, both of you. The Western media, European, American, have been covering Russia really well recently. There are incredible journalists who know Russia from media outlets. Yet, do you think the Western media is missing something, and what is it while covering Russia? And I'm not saying only the war. Yeah, obviously war is the biggest thing now, but also something else.
I think Russia is missing now from the focus of the international media, and it's clear why it's happening. You are one of the clear examples why it happened, why most Western media had to withdraw from Russia. And unfortunately, we don't see a lot of reporting about what is happening in Russia. Just like, from the beginning, I think it's, forgive me my political comment, I think from the beginning of this war, there was a very clear and very brave strategy in the West about Ukraine, but there was no strategy about Russia. There was no attempt to try to construct policy against Russia, and we see that against Russian invasion and what to do with Russia. So I think there was no concept what to do with Russian immigrants, if the West needs to split Russian elite and try to make as many influential Russian defect to the West as it used to be during the Cold War era. So unfortunately, thanks to sanctions, a lot of potentially anti-Putin Russian mid-level businessmen were pushed back to Russia. And unfortunately, Russian society during these 3 years became more unified and more mobilized, even those people who were not supporting the war are now more probably indifferent. And so I think that idea of what is happening in Russia is missing from the Western media outlets. I know that my colleagues and we are doing quite a lot. I'm writing mostly for Western media, for the New York Times, for Vanity Fair, for Foreign Affairs, because I think it's important that we still have sources, although we are not on the ground, but we still have an access to a lot of people there. And I was really amazed that the number of people I was talking to right after the invasion started was much bigger than the number of my sources that I had, for example, 7 years ago when I was writing All the Kremlin's Men, my first book about Putin's inner circle and its transformation. Because I saw that a lot of people are in some kind of inner immigration. They don't want to feel themselves as accomplices. They want to do something to protest, but they cannot speak out in Russia. But they need, or at least most of them needed, some kind of therapist. I realized that I was working as some kind of therapist for a lot of Russian high-ranking bureaucrats who were telling me about their torments, about their internal struggle, how they were feeling with that situation where they have to work, they have to be accomplices of this aggressive war. But they still wanted to talk. And actually, most of repressions against independent media, my prison term in absentia, our status of foreign agents, the only meaning of that is to scare our sources, is to just detach us from our sources in Russia and stop us from reporting from Russia.
Masha.
Yeah, I agree with everything with Mikhail said. I just want to add that I always, when I always see this harmful narratives, for example, about Russian society, that after the invasion, for example, why don't you protest? But Russian society did protest. And I understand that many people, they don't understand the reality of Russia, what's happening, that it's too dangerous for Russians even to write in their social media that they are against the war, because authorities, police, they can put them in jail for many years only for this. And I think it's important to remember. And second thing, that when I see, for example, narrative that most of Russians, they support this war, I don't agree with this, because how do you know? Sociology, it doesn't work right now. Because, for example, if you ask Russians on the streets, on camera, do you support this war or not? How do you think what they can say if they understand that Russian authorities, police can see this video? And we know examples when Russians...
If you say no, you're going to be arrested.
When Russians participated in this vox pops on the streets, and they said loudly that they're against the war and they don't support policy of Vladimir Putin, and after that they started criminal case against them.
We have two examples at RFE when a lady participated in a vox pop in Moscow and a criminal case was launched against her. Another young lady in Siberia, I believe, she gave an interview to the regional project, and she was also detained and arrested for that. So it's a real thing.
At the same time, I'm sorry, we really don't have any sociology, but we have possibilities to check what is the real public opinion, and one of them, it's funny, but one of them is the box office. We can see which movies Russians watch, and they're buying tickets. You cannot cheat that system. We see that every single patriotic blockbuster failed in Russian box office, and they were very blockbusters about sport, victories in sport were very successful before the invasion, and every single one flopped and failed after that. No single patriotic blockbuster was a success. only fairy tales. So it's
Yeah,
like
fairy tales.
Yeah, it shows that everyone is so weak, is so frightened and frustrated. They don't want to decide anything. They want mother to come and to hug them and just to tell them that it's going to be over. Don't be afraid. That's the mental state of the population during the 3 years.
Yeah.
At least that's something we can. The conclusion we can make analyzing the box office, at least.
This is a beautiful example how I'm often asked how to get information from inside Russia. This is a perfect example how you read through propaganda news, how you watch through propaganda videos, how you just simple this information can say a lot. Mikhail, I know about your work inside of Russia right now, not only journalism. What can be done beyond journalism from Exile to reach to the audiences?
I have my own mission. You know that besides to being a journalist, I'm a historian, and I truly believe that history, as we saw, Vladimir Putin is obsessed with history, and he is using history as the weapon. He is trying to use traditional Russian historical narrative to justify the war, to explain that it is okay, it is.
This is our past.
It's meaningful, yeah. It's our destiny to have this war and to win it. And actually, I started my work after the beginning of the invasion with writing the book called War and Punishment. It was published in 2023, and that's the story of Russian historical myths about Ukraine and the story how Russian Empire was suppressing Ukraine and was rewriting Ukrainian history and Russian history during the last centuries, and how current Russian authorities, how Vladimir Putin is using all those historical myths for his propaganda. And basically that book became the reason for my prison sentence. But I know, because I have a lot of communication with Russian regional teachers of history from high school. I have something like hidden seminars for teachers from provincial schools. We are discussing the new history textbooks written by former Russian Minister of Culture Vladimir Medinsky, who is now the official historiographer and who has written few Putinist versions of Russian history. And basically, the messages I'm getting from those teachers are, it's it's a bit funny, because they say Is it better? Do you hear me? Hello. Yeah, it's better. So I have some kind of secret seminars with Russian history teachers who work in Russia in different Russian regions. And from them, I know that the new version of Russian history, the new textbooks of written by Vladimir Medinsky, they are so terrible, and it's even clear for high school kids, for the students, and they are so obviously propagandist. Sometimes they have the opposite consequences. They make children want to learn more. They want them to Google, to look for another literature, for another sources of information. So I think it's very important. So the work I'm doing is not only about journalism, but also about the writing the more fact-based version of history, because I think that history is something that shapes our values. That creates the vision of the future for the society. The way how we see the future of our society is always based on our history.
If I may, I'll share
I want to share something I've been doing, something beyond journalism to reach the audience in Tatar language. We've been teaching Tatar through the multimedia project, and we've been teaching history as well. So now imagine I was in prison and I started getting letters that people started learning Tatar because of my case. And that was something incredible that kept me going in prison, knowing that the project that I launched was living and had a bright future. So that was something beyond journalism, which was something very meaningful, that connecting journalism with real people as well. We're all real people. And I'm sure Masha has her examples too of like connecting to the audience.
Yeah, actually, like, I know that I receive a lot of messages, how I said before, like from people who watch my program, and after that they can talk to relatives about that, about Russian pro-Kremlin and pro-war propaganda. But sometimes I receive messages from my audience, for example, is talking about, I think, mood of Russian society as well. They text me, thank you for your program, because I feel that I'm in Russia right now. I had to stay. I cannot leave country. But thank you for your program, because I feel that I'm not alone here. And it's important as well, because when you surrounded by propaganda, when you see all these narratives and you cannot like hide from it, I think it's really important to stay in contact and understand that you are not alone. And I think it's a mission right now of Exile media as well.
Sense of community is very important, and here I want to express my gratitude for having exiled Russian journalists here at NPC. And my question to you is, what the American journalism community can do to help you guys to do your job from exile to do well. And I know economic hardship is number one. Even today, I read the RSF's Press Freedom Index. The biggest threat to journalism is financial threat. Let's not talk about financial. We know the urgency, all of us, we know it. Something else. What else can be done?
I think that the most important thing is collaboration between Russian journalists and Western journalists on what's happening in Russia right now. And I want to give an example. This is the investigation of the death of Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina that was published recently by many media. It was really important, and we saw how important she was captured on occupied Ukrainian territories by Russian intelligence services, and she was tortured to death in Russian prisons. And she's not the only journalist, Ukrainian journalist or Ukrainian civilian who right now remain in Russian prisons and who are tortured there by Russian prison guards. And I think it's really important to talk about this. And this investigation, it showed to us how important that there were not only Russian or Ukrainian journalists they worked together with Western journalists. Because, for example, Western journalists, they have their own sources. Russian journalists, of course, it's more easy for them to check Russian social media, to try to find traces of evidence of something in Russian social media, trying to contact Russian prison guards and talk to them off the record to understand what really happened with Victoria Roshina and other Ukrainian civilians, for example, if we talk about this material, but for others as well. I think it's really important to collaborate and to work together on what's happening in Russia, because it becomes more and more difficult right now. What Putin tries to do, he's trying to close the country, to hide everything. And I think we should work together to fight it and to show the truth, to show what's happening in Russia right now.
Mikhail.
I agree with Masha. I think collaboration is the key word, is something that is equally needed by both sides, I guess. Probably I'm too bold, but I believe that, and I think many Americans don't know that there are a lot of very professional, high-level journalists who used to work in Russia during all those years. Although the media market was eradicated, and Putin did his best to eliminate all the traditional media, but that was not the end of the Russian journalism. That was the beginning, because a lot of brave independent journalists migrated online, and we developed a very brilliant industry of online media, technologically very advanced. And I would say that we were poor and miserable, but we had to be creative and inventive. So I think the level of Russian YouTube video channels, the level of Russian video production and investigative blogs was very high, because basically since 2014, there was no opportunity for Russian independent journalists to have the mainstream media. But still, independent investigative journalism was thriving in Russia until 2022. And now there are a lot of great professionals working in Berlin, in Riga, in Amsterdam, in London, in New York City. And I think all those journalists could be very helpful for American media. They need fellowships. They need training. They would love to study in America, in American schools and universities. Not in terms of journalism, I think, but in terms of some probably for many people, language is the issue, because most of them used to work only in Russian. But they can share their ideas and their knowledge, but they cannot. They are not so fluent. But I think, I don't want to joke about that, but I think that Russian expertise in fighting for democracy could be helpful in this country as well, because I hear a lot of questions from my friends in New York City about what should we do now. What don't we understand about new system, about new threats to American media? And I think American media are fine, because American media, American institutions are very strong. We didn't have any institutions in Russia because no democratic institution existed. The only institution that was working was independent media. We had no one to fight against Russian authoritarian system except for journalists, and we did everything we could for 22 years. So yeah, journalists are very strong.
I have a question. Before I ask that, I want to ask if there are any questions, because my question is very challenging. Yes, please. Paul. Oh, Pavel. Okay, Pavel.
Hi. Pavel Batorin, Radio for Europe. As someone who subjects herself to the torturous watching of Russian state television, can you talk a little bit about the narratives that you currently see on Russian TV that you find to be misleading or straight up false? And how successful do you think the Kremlin has been in exporting those narratives to the outside world, particularly the United States?
So about United States, you tell me how they're successful. Are they? I think kind of. But talking about their narratives, I think that it's important to understand that right now, Russian propaganda, they don't need anymore to convince anyone in something, because they already did their job before 24th of February and first months of 24th of February, because they explain to people why it was a good decision to invade Ukraine. And they did their job. How I said before, Kremlin polarized Russian society, and everyone who wanted to agree with Putin decision, they already agreed. And everyone who against the war, they against the war. And all these arguments from Russian state TV, they don't work for them, of course. Right now, it's they're trying. It's funny because even people who watch Russian state propaganda, they have a question right now, why are we becoming friends with United States? Because it's something strange. Because all these years, you told us that we are fighting not against Ukraine, but against the West. And right now you say that they are our friends. It's pretty strange. So people, they have questions, and I already met and talked to people who have pro-war opinion, and they're a little bit confused of Russian propaganda right now in their narratives. But unfortunately, Russian propaganda works. It's not something that we found out only on Russian experience. We knew it before. And of course, if they need to change their opinion quickly, they will do it, and they will convince their audience that everything that we are doing right now is right. That we need to be friends with the United States, and it's not there is not anything unlogical in this decision. So they are working, and they are unfortunately pretty successful. For example, I filmed a whole program about Margarita Simonyan, the head of Russia Today, and about how she changed her opinion during first year of war. And sometimes we showed to people that sometimes she said directly opposite things. One day in one studio, she said one thing, and in a week, she said the opposite thing. Actually, this program was pretty successful because even people who have a pro-war position, they watched this program and they were like, well, I think that something is wrong here.
Creating
I think
curiosity.
I have one more little point. There is one very important message of Russian propaganda that is being spread domestically and internationally, and it's democracy does not exist. That's probably the most important message they've been spreading for many years, and they are trying to prove that there are no independent media anywhere in the world, that free and fair elections do not exist at all, that police is equally brutal in any country, that all the politicians in the world are corrupted, equally in the West and in Russia. So it's very different from the way how Soviet propaganda used to work. Soviet propaganda used to prove that our communist system is better than the capitalist system. Current Russian propaganda says that no, we are bad, but they are not better. They are probably even worse because they are hypocrites, and we are not hiding the fact that we are aggressors. Yes, we don't have democracy, but they don't have democracy either. And I think they are very successful in spreading this message in Spanish and Arabic versions of RT. And this is the message specific for the Global South, and they are doing great.
Yeah, a small thought that the main argument of Russian propaganda is, what about, so they start their argument with, and what about you, United States? What are you doing? Let's talk about you, not about us. And this is the main thing of Russian propaganda.
Yeah, thank you. We had another question. Paul, can we have a...
Thank you very much for this excellent panel. Mikhail, if I could drag you back into politics for 1 second. You suggested that the U.S. approach to Ukraine had been admirable in many respects, but that wasn't a policy towards Russia. What would you have liked to see the United States do? For instance, you said sanctions may have backfired on an element of Russian society to push them back into the pro-Russia camp that might have been cleavable? What would you have liked to see them do? And given that there's a lot of turmoil now around peace, around ceasefires, around, you know, where do you see that going? It's one question for you. And Masha, when you talk about the impact of media from outside into the country, what would be the impact of the shuttering, which they seem to be determined to do, of RFE-RL in Russia? What will be lost if there is no RFE-RL?
You know, I won't try to be to look like the political advisor on sanctions, but as a journalist, I remember perfectly well that in the beginning of the invasion, Russian political elite and Russian business elite even more was shocked. No one was expecting this war. No one supported this war, and most, like, Russian business, Russian political elite, they were expecting catastrophe. Everyone was pretty sure that that was Putin's fatal mistake. A lot of people were telling rather openly that now he's done. Like, he used to be a lucky bastard, he used to get away with everything, but that's the end. He's not going to get away with it. So everyone was sure that that was the end for Russian economy first. And a lot of Russian businessmen were planning to leave as soon as possible. They did not want that war. They knew that that was the collapse of their dreams. That was the collapse of their future, because the way how they saw the future was completely different. No one could have imagined this war. So a lot of people were trying to leave, but somehow sanctions reversed that stream, and a lot of people finding their bank accounts frozen in the West. I am after leaving Moscow, in 3 weeks I found my bank account in Germany blocked because of my Russian passport. So Russian passport was enough to be kind of sanctioned in Europe. So, but you know, I didn't have money on my bank account, so I suffered, but not that much as those mid-level businessmen, as those middle-class people who had their businesses and who were trying to be independent, to fight Putin, but to make money. And a lot of people had to come back to the country. A lot of people were like pushed back, and that caused some kind of minor economic boom, investment boom in Russia. And now we see basically that Russian economy did not collapse. All those my sources who were terrified in 2022, they are fine. I remember a guy was telling me that he was not going to fly to use airplane in Russia because the aircraft parts are not going to be exported from the West, and so the aircraft is going to fall down. But now it's fine. And you know that Gabon is #1 exporter of aircraft parts to Russia. Gabon is exporting parts for Boeings and Airbus. So, and basically, I think that there is still some room. At least, the biggest chance was missed. A lot of people who were eager to go to leave Russia, to start supporting Ukraine, to start working against Putin's regime, are now back in the country, and they are more or less, if not satisfied, but they got used to this situation. They know that at least at home it's stable. But obviously, when the talks about potential ceasefire started, everyone was happy. Everyone was really, that was the opportunity. So no one really wants, except for one person, this war to continue. And that's another window of opportunity, because like deep inside, people are tired of the war, not only in Ukraine, but in Russia as well.
Talking about, I remember, just want to add, I remember how YouTube decided to shut down monetization from Russian audience it's another example of weird decision, because YouTube is the main platform for independent journalists. And for them, this monetization from Russian audience was crucial to continue their work. And after that, like, for example, my audience, I have 70% of my viewers, they're in Russia. So
we are all sanctioned by Google.
We're all sanctioned by Google.
For working for Russian audience.
Not Russian propagandists. They receive their budgets from government. And we are sanctioned by Google. Talking about Radio Free Europe, I think that for me, for example, I think that Radio Free Europe does incredible work with their regional bureaus. And I think that no one has it anymore, only Radio Free Europe. And it's really important for them to continue their job, because a lot of stories we see and we know about them only because of the work of regional bureaus of Radio Free Europe. It's really important. And for me as a video journalist, it's really important to see all these documentaries that Radio Free Europe does right now, because it's a lot of material, and what's important, it's a lot of material from inside Russia. And Radio Free Europe always has these resources to continue their job from inside Russia. I think this is the most important thing.
Thank you, Masha. If we have more questions...
I'm sorry, one more word about Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. I think there are, like, if we're not speaking only about Russia, if we're speaking about former Soviet Union and former Soviet republics, there are countries, and we know anything about what's happening there only thanks to current time, actually.
Yeah.
For example, Turkmenistan is a country completely forgotten by everyone in this world except for Radio Free Europe, and like everything we know is from you guys.
Thank you. We have 1 minute. I have that question. When are you guys going back? And what are you going to take with you?
Tomorrow. As soon as possible. So how Misha said before, Mikhail said before, I don't want to sit on my suitcases. I want to continue my job. I want to continue to live my life. And I cannot look back all the time and every minute, but I want to go home like today.
I'm very optimistic. I'm not. I don't think that I have to pack my suitcases to go tomorrow. But I'm really optimistic, and I know that it will happen, because I think that I see a lot of reasons why Russian society will overcome. I know that our work is meaningful. I know that we are very different from the previous waves of Russian immigration who came to the West in 1917 or in the 70s, because they were leaving Russia and they dispersed. We have we have institutions like independent media that connect all Russian-speaking, all anti-Putin Russian society, and we are helping Russian society domestically, and we have the same agenda. And I know that at the same time there is clear generation gap in Russia, and the old Soviet generation is very different from all the younger people who live in Russia, and they still have very different values. Russian propaganda, unfortunately, is effective. Brainwashing is happening, but it's not that impactful because those propagandists who are working, they don't believe in anything they say. They know that that's a lie. So it's really hard. It's much harder for them to work, much harder than for the communist high priests, because Secretary Suslov really believed in communism. Medinsky does not believe in, or Margarita Simonyan, they do not believe in anything. So I think we have much more arguments on our side. So I'm sure that one day we're going back.
Thank you very much. We can extend this conversation over coffee if you have more questions. Thank you very much.